What's up, everybody? It's your boy Stephen Motivate back again with another political talk as we really dive into what are the platforms and the policies tied to those platforms in our country. Last time we talked about the Republican policy platform. We got a little bit into it before we had to cut short, so we're going to keep doubling back on this until we get all the way through the document. It may be a bit tedious for some, but it's meant to be educational for us all to understand not just the politics, not just the people, but what are the actual policies behind these political parties that are taking up so much of our TV time, the news, right? And really causing a lot of division, it feels like, in America today. So let's hop right into it. We were looking last time at chapter 1 of the Republican platform plan. So just to break through them again really quickly. So their plan is defeat inflation and quickly bring down all prices. We looked at that. Seal the border and stop migrant invasion. That's what we'll talk about today. Number 2. And then they got 3 through 10 that we'll get through in some of our other videos. But today we're going to focus on sealing the border and stopping the migrant invasion. So, and just to briefly recap, we talked about inflation last time from, defeating inflation, which, prices are inflated. Things do cost a bit more, but we dug into a bit why that might be. And we think Republicans do have to at least assume some of the blame for where things are at as it relates to inflation. Okay, so let's dive into chapter 2 here. So part of the Republican policy is that they want to seal the border and stop the migrant invasion. Wow, invasion is a very, very, very colorful language. And so Republicans, they say our commitment is to offer an aggressive plan to stop open border policies that have opened the floodgates to a tidal wave of illegal aliens, deadly drugs, and migrant crime. We will end the invasion at our southern border, restore law and order, protect American sovereignty, and deliver a safe and prosperous future for all Americans. Paid for by no one. Listen, this may be somewhat legit, but let's dive into kind of why or why not it may be legit. Because, again, we're trying not to be biased here. Again, I'm not a Republican, but I think it's super helpful that we're just educated about this stuff instead of focusing simply on, the theatrics associated with, the politics in America. So what may be true here, and what's interesting is that there are more migrants, immigrants is what we call them, people that aren't from this country but are coming to this country either because they think they can find a better life in America, or they're fleeing something, or they may be associated with some sort of crime, or and they're escapees. There could be all types of situations that are involved with why people might come to America. We are considered one of the best places on earth. A lot of freedoms, a lot of wealth here. People have money. People are willing to spend that money. It's the land of hope and opportunity, right? I remember when I was in South Africa several years ago, and just talking to people on the streets, they were very curious about, how is America? What is that like? And they saw it as a way to change their future, or change their family's future, because let's face it, we do have a lot of abundance over here. Even though we have a lot of poverty and a lot of issues, there is a lot of money in our economy. And so people can come to America for a number of reasons. That is no doubt true. As it relates to the politics of this, Republicans are saying they want to secure the border. And so what's interesting here is I've done a little bit of research before we started shooting today, is that really you have to look at what happened during the previous administration's tenure. So COVID happened in 2020. During COVID, and even before COVID, President Trump ran on the platform of building a wall, stopping invasions, and all this sort of thing. And he was empowered by the fact that there was a global pandemic and crisis. And apparently, what it allowed him to do was really to evoke some laws or invoke some laws. Not sure what the proper word is there, but he basically was able to use some laws that previously didn't get used all that often to stop people from coming into the country. So you can really see a deep decrease in migrants around the COVID sort of time frame because there was a shutdown on the borders. If you guys remember the travel ban, certain you're not allowed to even come into the United States if you're coming from certain countries. There were people that were even citizens of America that had trouble getting back into the country simply because where the plane was flying from. So that was a special time, and it warrants giving, I guess Republicans some credit that on the back of that, there was a decrease in the amount of migrants that were let through the border at that time. I think when you go back a little bit before that, and you'll have to fact check me on this, but the wall and all that nonsense really didn't do much to actually prevent or create some sort of amazing border patrol that was promised in all the political rhetoric that was given. But if you're Trump, you can still take credit for the fact that, okay, during my tenure, even though it was a global pandemic, there was a strong decrease in, the amount of migrants, especially during that 2020 time, that stopped folks from getting into our country. And so you take that and then you look at what's happened with President Biden. Well, President Biden, on the other hand, did not continue to evoke that policy that the Trump administration did. And it sounds like it's for good reason, and I'll explain it, I think, from their point of view, is that, America we're a country of migrants. We're the land of the free, right, home of the brave. So it's kind of been in our history to let my people in from all over the world. It's not really, anything new. We've been doing that for centuries. And so to just have a sort of strict, we're not going to allow anybody in, and, this is just the way it's going to be. That Trump policy, some would argue that it exacerbated the issue because, okay, now if I can't come in, it makes me want to come in that much more, right? And due to some of the rules and sanctions and things that were in place, that even made those local economies where folks were fleeing from. You think about Mexico, you think about other places in Southern America, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Honduras, when certain support, because we're having this sort of, again, Republican, we're staunch, we're America first, and we don't really care about, these other countries, let them figure it out on their own. Well, there's certain support, there's certain money that our countries get, the American or the USA gives to other countries, and when you stop some of that, and when you cut some of that off, then it makes what's already probably a bad situation, it could in fact make that situation worse. So some might argue on the other side of the aisle that say there are policies, there are things that the Republicans put in place that really caused or forced or, exacerbated the issue by incentivizing people to say, I really want to get out of here now because there's even less support than what there was before. And so if you cut everybody off, we're not letting anybody in, you cut off some of your supply and support, which makes them want to leave even more. It's some would argue that President Biden received a border situation that was, in shambles. They were invoking things that had never been invoked before. It was a global pandemic. There was just a big mess going on, and there was a bunch of money spent on a wall that didn't get finished, and apparently didn't really help the situation because from what I understand, when people get across the border, it typically happens in a certain areas. It's not like let's just. It's like if you were ever in the you've seen the movies where it's like one cut in the fence at this certain place. Like you got to know the spot to go to get in, and so there are certain spots that are, I guess, more popular than others on how to get into the country. And so what happens is if people did get in under President Trump, they would be kicked out. Um, and I'm putting it in layman's terms, they'd be just kicked out. Whereas President Biden, what he changed is he lets them go through the due process. Well, should you be here? Or what's the da 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 da? And so, in some respects, some might say, all right, this is our chance to get in. There's a new administration that's not as strict as it relates to border security. Um, at least that's what the narrative is. And because of that, we've got to take our chance of getting in because we're at least going to get a fair shot to try to get into the country or to try to go through the process. Whereas the other law is like, some might say it borderlines on inhumane, and let's just kick them out, and let's not be concerned at all as to how it affects them or how it affects the countries that they're coming from, and what have you. So if you are on the side of Republicans where you agree that folks, need to be kicked out, they don't need to have a chance to be a part of our country, no matter how they got here, this these different laws that allow them to just kick people out, then you probably want to vote towards that policy. You probably want to look at, some of the things that are said here where if you look at number 2, it talks about Republicans will strengthen ICE, increase penalties for illegal entry and overstaying visas, and reinstate remain in Mexico and other policies that help reduce illegal immigration to historic lows in President Trump's first term. And again, that sort of historic lows is somewhat tied to them being a global pandemic happening on their watch. And so you always wonder, again, folks have to do what benefits them and what persuades them. But if you just read this on the face of it and you don't do the research, well, how do you get it to historic lows? Well, it was a global pandemic, and he did invoke some laws that, just kicked people out, frankly. And, some might say that that's the right thing to do, and some might say that that's a bit harsh or that's a bit much. And we've got to think through how would we want someone to be treated if it was us in that situation, right? If it was our family, if it was our, folks coming in, maybe you're fleeing some criminal activity. Maybe you're fleeing for your life. Maybe you're trying to get your family safe. And so I think that sort of humane, let's see if there's something, like, we're blessed, we're a rich country. Let's see if there's something we can do to be a benefit to these people. I think that's what comes across as weakness on the Democratic front when people say, hey, the Democrats have just let the border crisis get out of control. That's partly what they're talking about. And so when you think about, there are some other things that are very interesting as it relates to our political environment right now. It's not only that you say that Democrats are weaker on the border, it's more open borders, there's more people entering now, there's more people on on this side of the country now because they're trying to go through this process. We could just kick them out. But what's interesting is there have been some policies that the Biden administration put in place or tried to get passed that got voted down by Republicans. And so you have to think about, where is our country at when, if this guy gets the credit for it, if Biden gets the credit for it, then we're going to vote against it. Right. So here's some things that happened in 2023. So there was a government funding package that President Biden signed into law It provided $7.1 billion, which was a 17% increase from the year before, to the Border Patrol. Additionally, the funding package provided $65 million for 300 new Border Patrol agents and $60 million for 125 new personnel at points of entry, and $230 million for technology like autonomous surveillance towers. But apparently, House Republicans voted against this historic funding. So this is what I think is interesting because, if we're really concerned this is a crisis and we really want it changed, if we're Republican, why vote against that? And, some might say maybe it didn't have enough or didn't like it, but it kind of makes you think that maybe they didn't want the Democrats to get credit for a topic they knew they could use against the Democrats, so effectively during an upcoming campaign. And, look, this is not all going to be one-sided. We will get on the Democrats. We will review their platform. We will dig into what they've said and maybe not done. But right now we're talking about the Republicans. And for them to deny or to vote against a package that would increase border security and then to turn around and say, no, we're going to do it when you elect us to office, seems like, again, you're not interested in solving the problem. You're more interested in seeing who gets the credit. And for me, I take a bit of an issue with that. And I don't think that's the right way. And I think most people wouldn't agree that that's the right way to do things. And so we've got to think about what type of people would make that decision. What type of leaders would act that way? And maybe it's all of them. Maybe it's just a systemic part of our political system that if I don't get the credit, I'm not voting for it. If it doesn't benefit my ability to get reelected, then I'm not going to do it, whether it's the right thing or not. And I think that's politics, and I get that. But what I don't want you to be ignorant. I don't want you to be unaware of the fact that this, seal the border and stop the migrant invasion, this rhetoric is, maybe they should say seal the border and stop the migrant invasion only if we get the credit. Like, add that piece to it if that's really what you're interested in. Don't just say, hey, I want to stop this invasion and use this, hyperbolic language and not really dive into the fact that, no, folks have tried to present a solution to this and you've been against it. So that's my biggest critique there. Look, the border situation is a problem. It's certainly not good. It's certainly not something that anyone would say is in a good position. And so I'm interested to see how the Democrats respond to this and how they think they might fix it. But clearly, the Republicans have said that they believe the goal is to deport folks. The goal is to, do strict vetting. And even look at this language here at the bottom. Republicans will use existing federal law to keep foreign, Christian-hating, communist, Marxists, and socialists out of America. Those who join our country must love our country. We will use extreme vetting to ensure that jihadists and jihadist sympathizers are not admitted. All right. If that relates to you, then, attaboy, go America. But if you think that, all people, American or not, deserve a certain amount of humane treatment, folks should be vetted. Sure, we don't want to allow criminals to just roam our streets freely. But we also have to just remember what this country was based on. And this country is full of immigrants, and it's full of a diverse set of people and different beliefs and different religions. And we got to be careful, I think, about trying to be so strict and so staunch and show it has to be this way that we actually do more harm than good. Uh, so, that's chapter two. That's point two of their platform. I think some other things on there is stop sanctuary cities, um, and ensure our legal immigration system puts American workers first. I will touch on this briefly. The American workers first part. I think research has been done that a lot of jobs that immigrants are taking um, are jobs that most Americans don't want to do. That has been a myth that has been expelled quite some time ago, that immigrants aren't stealing our jobs, because most of the jobs that they're getting aren't jobs that folks are interested in taking. So, that I do want to address that. Uh, the next chapter here, and I don't know if we have time for this, but I can at least introduce it a bit, is chapter three, where the Republicans say we will build the greatest economy in history. Let's read this one right here. It says American workers are the most productive, talented, innovative on earth. The only thing holding them back is the suffocating policies of the Democratic Party. Our America First economic agenda rests on five pillars: slashing regulations, cutting taxes, securing fair trade deals, ensuring reliable and abundant low-cost energy, and championing innovation together. We will restore economic prosperity and opportunity for all Americans. So, number one, it says they'll cut regulations, which sounds great, right? Republicans will slash regulations that stifle jobs, freedom, innovation, and make everything more expensive. We will implement transparency and common sense in rulemaking. That sounds fantastic. We're going to cut regulations, but this this is what I want you to understand as Black people. Again, that's primarily my audience here. We needed some regulations in place as it relates to the economy, as it relates to workforces. Regulations, in fact, is what got affirmative action, what got people a chance to diversify their workforce. You see now a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion departments are going away, because what do we need diversity for anymore? And if we needed regulations to get here, it just, that language bothers me. Let's just cut all the regulations. Well, what regulations are you cutting? Because we don't want people sexually harassed. We don't want people discriminated in the workplace. We don't want people with the money that employ the people to have all the power. Employees need some sort of power. They need to be able to fight back a little bit, if not a lot of it. So we just, again, that language is interesting, because it sort of pushes towards this Republican mantra that, if you're a business person, you just want all regulations cut. Well, not really. There are some regulations, especially for Black people, that we've benefited from, and we're ever grateful that regulations exist. He says here, make Trump tax cuts permanent and no tax on tips. I gotta get more research on this as relates to his tax cuts and how they benefited or helped the economy. So I'll do some research on that, and we'll come back to that in our next video. It says they will eliminate taxes on tips for millions of restaurant and hospitality workers and pursue additional tax cuts. That sounds good. I mean, I think that's good regulation. Let's make sure that people don't have to report their tips and get taxed on it. Okay, that should put more money in people's pockets. I am curious, though, about the tax cuts for the mega rich and the big corporations. Let's see, fair and reciprocal trade deals. Republicans will continue forging an American first trade policy as set forth in Chapter 5, standing up to countries that cheat, prioritizing American producers over foreign outsourcers. We will bring our critical supply chains back home. President Trump will turn American trade policy around, protecting U.S. producers and renegotiating failed agreements. I do want to reference a book here that is quite interesting as it relates to bringing certain supply back home. And we've got to build stuff America first, and I agree with that. I think that makes sense. But some things are not as it's not as there's really not a conspiracy tied to it. Um, Certain jobs, certain industries, certain things that get made overseas are not made there for no reason. There was um, a reason that happened, right? It isn't just that somebody said, "Oh, go ship all these jobs overseas and all this manufacturing overseas." Rather, um, there's this book called Chip War. That's what I wanted to reference. Rather, there's a history as to why certain things are made overseas, and this book called Chip War is a great read. You can check it out. Um, it's called Chip War: The Fight for the World's Most Critical Technology, and it talks about microchips, computer chips, and why a lot of computer chips are made in Taiwan. Ironically, when you're making a computer chip, it has to be very clean factory. You're dealing with very small parts. And so this lends itself to smaller hands, actually. And, that's not being, judgmental or racist or stereotypical. It's just the fact that there are certain areas in the world, in the globe, where smaller hands are more hereditary things. That's the word I'm looking for. There are some hereditary traits that, just create certain things. And the fact that folks have smaller hands or lended themselves towards this specific industry. So again, I don't want you to be unaware of the fact that, why don't we make all our chips in America? Well, there's a reason. There were folks in a different area that their hereditary genetic traits lended them to making those chips quicker, faster, better, and more customers ended up choosing those chips versus ones that were made in America. The ones that were made in America weren't as reliable, weren't as good, didn't work as well, failed more often. And so folks went with the stuff that was better. And so certain things are not, and we'll jump back more into chapter 3 of the Republican platform in our next video. But, certain things aren't a conspiracy. So certain economies and certain things we do in our economy, certain things you're not going to be able to bring back, if that makes sense. And so I want to help you understand that. And as the Republicans talk about building the greatest economy in history, okay, good. That sounds interesting. Let's look behind those policies and see how we do it. So that'll be in our next video. Look, I hope this helped you as much as it's helped me. I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible because, again, this is not about people. It's not about politics or personas. It's more about what are the policies and how that should inform the way you participate in the political process. So this is the special edition with Stephen Motivate talking about politics. Again, I hope it helped you as much as it helped me. As always, stay motivated. It's your boy, Stephen Motivate. Peace.